I'm going to start going into the individual episodes and what I think each individual episode does so well. So this show, seriously 5 out of 5 stars, best show on earth. Like, I genuinely cannot think of a better TV show than this one, so do go watch it, please, seriously. It's on Netflix. It's really easy to watch, half-hour episodes. So anyways, episode number 1 is The Boy in the Iceberg. So in episode number 1, we get to meet all of our characters, and I think that it sets up all of the characters really well. We get to see Sokka as being impulsive, we get to see Katara as being hopeful but also ambitious, we get to see Aang as being just fun and really outgoing and really just kind of fun. Like, I don't know what other word to use. Like, he's just so energetic. He's got so much fire and spark, and like, he wants to be a good person. And as I said, I think it does a really good job of introducing these characters and just showing us who they are. And then we also get to see a little bit of Zuko as well, and Zuko and Iroh and their kind of dynamic. You get to know what Zuko's kind of goal is overall, so that you kind of start to get an idea for where the series is gonna go. So episode number 2 is the Avatar Return. So in this episode, he winds up getting caught by Zuko, which is such a great scene because, like, you get to see Aang just being a good human. Like, he is the epitome of good human. And you get to see him kind of sacrifice himself for the Water Tribe, which I think is beautiful. And then Katara and Sokka go to save him, but we discover what the Avatar state is. And I thought that that was fantastic as well, because that we get to start seeing this awesome action off the bat with this show. Because that's one of the things that this show also does really well, is the fantastic action sequences. So then we go to the Southern Air Temple in episode 3. And this is such a hard episode because, like, this is where Aang really starts to see what it is to see all of the people that he's ever loved just gone from the world. And it's really heartbreaking to watch. And this is where you start to see Sokka and Katara start to become family for him and start to become the people that he relies on, and really the only people in his life that he has right now in his circle, and who's helping him outside of him just being the Avatar. It's just really heartbreaking to watch him go through that, but it really does set his character up for a lot of growth in the show. So after this, we go to Kyoshi Island in episode 4, and we get to meet Suki, who is one of my all-time favorite characters in the show. She is probably up there. She might be number 2 after Zuko, honestly, because she is such a badass chick. She is where Sokka starts to really see how women can be more than just the role that he is used to them fulfilling in his culture. You know, they can be fighters, they can be warriors, they can be vicious, they can throw some punches too. And I adored it. And I thought that it was just such a great dynamic, and it really set him up to kind of learn about what his beliefs currently are and where they need to get to. Okay, so episode 5, we go to Umashu. We get to meet the king of Umashu, and this is someone that Aang actually knew as a kid, and I think that that's super exciting to have at least some tie for him to where he came from and his past, because right now he's only got Sokka and Katara, and now he's got King Bumi. So that's fantastic, and I love how kooky King Bumi is. Like, he is so weird, and it's so great, and I just love how we start to meet these old masters in the beginning of the show, because, ooh, they are some good badass benders. So episode number 6 is Imprisoned, and is my least favorite episode in the entire show. So in Imprisoned, Katara winds up seeing this kid, Earthbend, who is in a town that's controlled by the Fire Nation, and they have imprisoned all of the Earthbenders from this town. So he winds up getting imprisoned, and Katara winds up going to try to save him, and she gives this really impassioned speech about how the Earthbenders, you know, like, they are strong, and she, you know, that's what she's grown up knowing. And it's a great speech. That's probably the part of the episode that I like the most, but I just dislike the episode because it feels very formulaic as far as episodes go. You see the plot structure elements really clearly in this episode, and that's kind of what bothers me the most, because you don't see them as clearly in other episodes, and like in this one it's like problem, solution. Anyways, it's fine. It's just my least favorite episode. Okay, so episodes 7 and 8 are the Winter Solstice episodes. First part of the episode I don't like as much as the second part, but I do think that it's really cool that we get to see how things grow back, because in the first part of the episode we see an area of the land that has been scorched by the Fire Nation, and at the end of the episode we get to kind of see how that's gonna come back, because even though it was scorched, nature does grow out again. And I like how this points out, you know, how we need to care for nature, because nature will come back to bite you in the ass if you don't. But then we get to learn that Aang needs to talk to Avatar Roku, who is the last Avatar before him, and to do that he has to go to an area of the Fire Nation, and so we go there in the Winter Solstice Part 2, and this is where we get kind of our series mission, which is what I really love. And I think that this is what this series does really well, is because once this mission is completed, the series is over. Like, it doesn't drag itself on longer than it needs to go. It stops at a clear point. But that's kind of getting into season 3 a little bit, so we're not going to do that. But essentially what the mission of the series is Aang has to learn all 4 elements by summer's end to defeat the Fire Lord before Sozin's Comet comes. And Sozin's Comet was the comet that was used to start the war in the first place. And so it's just so exciting that we get this nice mission, and it just feels very clean as far as like knowing where the story is going to go is concerned. Because it simultaneously tells us where the story is going to go, but at the same time leaves a lot of questions as to how we're going to get there, which is really what you care about when you're watching a story or reading a book, because you don't normally care about necessarily the end as much. You care more about how you get to the end and what steps have to happen to get there and how the characters change as a result of the steps to getting there. So episode number 9 is the waterbending scroll. So now Aang knows he needs to learn waterbending, so he's going to start learning it. And Katara finds a waterbending scroll and she steals it from some pirates because she is ambitious and jealous, and I love it. And this is probably the most relatable episode for Katara for me. Like, this is the episode where I think that she shines the most, because this really starts to show her flaws a lot more, because we don't really see them as much in the earlier episodes. So episode number 10 is Jet, and again, this episode I feel like starts to show some of the flaws that Katara has, because she's very trusting, and she's very trusting of Jet. So is Aang, and this is another flaw of Aang, is that he's very trusting, but I think he learns to like question that and trust his friends a lot more towards the end of the show, so I think that's really good growth for him. But in this episode, we get to meet Jet, who is a great character. Really questionable moral decision made by Jet. They wind up saving a village that Jet almost destroys, which is really cool and really good. And I love it. I love how, you know, this episode shows that, like, not everyone in the Fire Nation is necessarily bad. Like, there are a lot of civilians who aren't involved in the war. Like, they just exist in the Fire Nation, and how the solution to this war isn't going to be to just punish everyone in the Fire Nation, because not everyone in the Fire Nation is at fault here. Episode number 11 is my next least favorite episode in the series, which is The Great Divide. It is the only filler episode in the entire show. All of the rest of them are structurally important to getting to the overall end goal of the end of the show, which is kind of cool, honestly, especially for a children's show where typically they don't structure it so that each episode is dependent upon the last one. Granted, some are less dependent on the last episode than others, but in this show, this is the only one that you can kind of just say happened at any point in the show, with the exception of whenever a new person enters the group. But this episode, Sokka and Katara wind up like kind of opposing each other, and they're trying to get through a canyon, and there is the clean people and there's the dirty people. That's literally how I remember them. I don't remember their names or anything. Katara and Sokka pick sides here, and it's great. I love how I feel like I relate more to the people who are just like, let's be lazy as shit, to the like, let's be super fastidious and like do everything right kind of people. Those lazy people, those are my people. Okay, so anyways, they just make it through the canyon. Sorry, I don't know if I summed up that episode really well. It's, again, it's the least important one, so just ignore it. If you're watching the show for the first time, you don't want to watch it, you can skip it, honestly. But also, don't skip it because you want to know more about my personality and how lazy I truly am. Anyways, episode number 12 is The Storm, which is one of the best episodes in the show. This show, we really start to dive into Aang and why he wound up in the iceberg in the first place. Why he really questioned being the Avatar, why he didn't want it, and we start to really see that development happen for him, because one of the biggest running themes for him in this show is that he didn't want to be the Avatar, and he doesn't want to be the Avatar, and that's a lot of pressure, and he feels like it's a lot of pressure, and he is just one kid. And so in this episode, we really start to dive into that and why he feels that way and how he feels that way and like what that means for him as a character. And it just really adds so much depth to him, and it's so great because it makes him so much more than just a fun character who's existing in the show, to a fun character who is also tormented by the fact that he's got so much pressure on his shoulders and he doesn't know what to do with it. And the storm, a bad storm just happens, and so Aang is stuck in a cave with Katara, and that's it. Okay, so episode number 13 is The Blue Spirit. This is where Commander Shao starts playing a bit of a a major role in the show. So he is kind of the main bad guy of season 1, and he captures Aang, and Sokka and Katara are both sick, so they're both just like struggling right now. And so Aang gets captured by Zhao, and then this blue spirit comes and saves him. And the blue spirit is Zuko, because Zuko needs to get Aang. He can't let Commander Zhao get Aang, because if Commander Zhao gets Aang, how's he gonna get his arm back? So I think that that's a great episode, because it really starts to show Zuko develop, and it really starts to kind of plant that seed of like, is Zuko good or is he bad? Like how bad is Zuko? You know, like what are his goals here? Because his goals are really just to get his honor back. It's not really to be a bad guy. He just wants his father to love him, which is like, oh my god, that's so deep. Zuko is my favorite character. I don't know if I've established that. I think he's the most deep character on the show, because he's not a bad guy. Like from episode 1, he's not an asshole. He just wants his parents. Like he just wants his dad to love him, and his dad is the bad guy, you know, like it's sad. Anyway, blue spirit, Zuko saves Aang, but winds up getting knocked out in the process. And right before Zuko wakes up, Aang asks him if he thinks they could have been friends if their situations had been different. And I love that moment. I think it really shows how Aang is really caring for everything. Like he doesn't just ignore people or dislike people. Like he loves every living thing, and he thinks that every living thing is valuable. And I think that adds something to his character when you start to see that in this episode. Zuko winds up going to attack Aang as soon as Zuko wakes up, but Aang, you know, just leaves because Zuko's struggling at the moment. It's a great moment overall, I think, in the show, and I think it sets up both Aang and Zuko for a lot of development later on, and I think it sets up Aang for being deeper as a character than he has been presented thus far in the show. So episode number 14 is the fortune teller, and so this episode is also not one of my favorites. Zuko, Katara, and Aang go to an Earth Nation village, and there's a fortune teller, and they get their fortunes told, and the fortune teller says that the land is gonna be safe, but then there's a volcano right nearby that's gonna explode, and so Aang, Katara, and Sokka save the village by preventing the volcano from exploding on it, and that's it. Like there's not a lot of deep stuff going on in this episode, so that's why it's one of my least favorites. Episode 15 is Bato. This is another one that I don't like as much, but it's more so because it makes me uncomfortable, because this is the one episode where I think Aang starts to not necessarily be very good. Like this episode, I think Aang is just written really weird, and so he doesn't feel like he does in the rest of the episodes, and that's probably the thing that I like the least, because in this episode, Katara and Sokka meet someone that they knew from the Southern Water Tribe, and he's waiting on a correspondence to know where to go to meet up with their dad. And Aang gets nervous about Sokka and Katara leaving him, and so he winds up intercepting the message and hides it. And that's the moment where I'm like, this doesn't feel like something Aang would do. And that's why this episode just feels kind of off for me, because Aang thus far hasn't been presented to be someone who's dishonest or distrustful. And I think that's why he doesn't last very long that he's had this letter, and then he shows it to them. Like it's literally like a night, but it still just feels kind of weird for his character. And so that's just what I don't like about that episode. Episode 16 is the deserter. So in this episode, Aang tries to learn his bending kind of out of order, and he wants to try to learn firebending, and he learns how destructive firebending can be. And I love how this starts to set up how Aang is gonna have to look for really good teachers, and not just good masters who know their stuff, but masters who know when to not attack, who know control. I think that really starts to show how much of a struggle it's going to be, not just to learn these elements, but to get people who are going to be good enough to teach him. So episode 17 is the Northern Air Temple. So in this one, we get to see some great Aang development again, because they go to the Northern Air Temple, and there are people there, but they're not airbenders, and Aang was so excited at first because he thought they were, but then he noticed they weren't. And we get to meet this super technologically inclined guy, and so we start to see the kind of threads of industrialization starting in this world. And I really love that as someone who thinks history is really interesting, because industrialization is a super interesting time in history. I love starting to see how, because of how the Fire Nation has been run so far, it's kind of got the best tech that sets them up to do better in this war than the other nations. So anyways, that's that episode. So episode 18 is the waterbending master. So this is when we get to the North Pole and Aang learns waterbending. And this is another great episode as far as showing how the tribes are a little sexist, because we see Katara be thrust out by the master and be forced to learn how to heal, which, I mean, healing is a cool thing, but it's not great if that's not what you want to do. So I love how Katara is able to prove her worth, and she's able to prove that she deserves to be there. So episode 19 is the Siege of the North. This is the season finale and it is so epic. It's got the epicest battle sequence. Like, not in the entire show, but definitely in the entire series. Because like, ooh, I love Iroh. I love how he reacts to what happens with the spirits. So in this episode, the Fire Nation comes to attack the Water Nation, and Commander Zhao, he tries to kill the Moon Spirit to stop the Waterbenders from being able to bend. And he does kill the Moon Spirit in this episode, and it's terrifying because like, what are they gonna do? But luckily Yue, who is the princess, she has a bit of the Moon Spirit's life in her. She's able to give herself up for that. And again, this show stuck his growth so much at this point because he's able to let her go. He's able to like let her make this decision and give herself up to be the Moon Spirit, even though this isn't something he wants to do, even though he feels like he's entrusted to protect her and he doesn't feel like this is protecting her. He's able to do it. And I think that that just shows his development so much. So anyways, that's my thoughts on the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I will definitely be doing a video like this for season 2, so hopefully you like this one. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts on season 1 of Avatar or any of the seasons because I've watched them all. Just if you comment on anything more than the first season, put like a spoiler warning or something, please, just for anyone else who's kind of checking out the comments. So anyways, see you in my next video. I post them on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Bye!